Hi everybody, it's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for another great week. We are back to a normal schedule. Next week, 5 days, normal schedule. The last few weeks have had like a day off or conference week, so we're happy to get back on a regular schedule as usual. There is a lot going on. Our planetarium field trip is coming up. If you haven't gotten a chance to turn in or to give a donation that pays for all the field trips, please go ahead and send that in. Almost everybody has, so thank you very much for supporting the class and the field trips. It makes a big difference. Earlier this week, as one of my other duties, in addition to being a teacher, I kind of represent the school on a technology committee. And they gave some resources about digital citizenship that is really geared toward parents, reading about what are the big pitfalls that students fall into making mistakes online. And so there's some information. It's linked on the updates page. It's just a bunch of information that might be interesting to parents. So we'll go over some of those things in class. We talk about digital footprint a little bit and like best practices online. But sometimes those things happen at school and then people go home or kids go home and then they're not always practicing those same things. So it's just a piece of information that might be helpful to you now or in the future. So like I said, it's linked in the updates page. Next week is also Red Ribbon Week. There is some information got sent home. There's like a different dress up theme every day. Of course, that is optional, but that could be a fun activity for you guys to do too. Like I said, there's a lot going on next week. The end of the trimester is coming into view. I think the trimester ends early or the middle of November. So we have, 3 or 4 weeks left until the trimester ends. There are grades being put in right now. And then, people have a chance to do like retakes or update their grade. But a couple of the grades, I think the writing grade over the next week will be like pretty much solidified for the trimester because we finished the big narrative pieces of writing. There will be some more grades added in the coming weeks for reading, but it's like getting close to being pretty solidified. So if you have any big questions, you can ask. And if there's still grades to come in, I will let you know that. But if you have any questions, please let me know. In reading next week, we're going to we kind of finished up with realistic fiction for the moment. We're going to focus on one short story next week called Your Move, and we'll discuss it. We'll kind of look at some individual pieces of that story, and then the kids will also take a quiz on it. And both of those times will really be focusing on how an individual part of a story can kind of affect or foreshadow or represent the whole story. Or maybe it has this one individual event is the biggest key moment in the story that I need to pay attention to. So we're gonna talk about that, and also just how the point of view of the narrator can really affect how we see the story. And so we'll use a couple stories to really talk about that. You can imagine what that might look like, but that's a really good thing for the kids to really start to think about, is that I get swayed a little bit toward the main character and in favor of them just because they're the narrator. And so I have to be able to be critical of the narrator, and I also have to be able to think about, if someone else told the story, would it look different? We are going to start one more read aloud before the end of 2024. So we might get into it next week, maybe not till the week after. It just kind of depends how things go. But the next read aloud is Holes by Louis Sachar, which is a really great book. In writing, the kids are going to celebrate their second published narrative. So they're going to turn in their second narrative tomorrow, which will be Friday. And then on Monday, we'll kind of look at them and celebrate them. And then we're going to take a little creative writing break before we get into our next big unit, which is coming up. In math, we're still working with decimals for the next few weeks. Really, next week, we're focusing on division strategies with decimals. The last week or two is on addition, subtraction, and multiplication strategies. Now we're getting into division strategies, which present some challenges because there are different rules for different kinds of decimals and how we solve those and what to do. So we're just going to wade through that a little bit and do some practice and really discuss about division in general. We'll also end up reviewing a little bit about comparing decimals. And so there will be like kind of a short quiz, once a week for the next few weeks to kind of round out the math grades for the trimester. And then some opportunities for students to retake if you're having trouble in one specific area. In social studies, the kids are making a group, and they are going to make a website to show their learning for the next chapter. So the next chapter, or the next unit, is all about the settlers came from England, France, and Spain. And we'll discuss the Netherlands a little bit also. And so there's a few things that happen. Number one is those countries are all in a big competition. They're trying to get all the resources they can out of these areas. So they end up kind of finding their own space, but they also have times where they're competing for resources. Those groups have conflict, but much more so the groups between any of those countries and the Native Americans were there come into direct conflict. And they had a bunch of cooperation. So the 3 C's are competition, cooperation, and conflict. And the kids are going to go through those and do some research in their textbook and build up their background knowledge. And their group will create a website that they will turn in that kind of represents all that they've learned about competition, cooperation, and conflict as people started settling the Americas. So that'll be a big project. It'll take us a while. It's not going to be due until early November, but that'll be a really good project. So then in science, the kids will be with Mrs. DeMarco in science lab, and they're also going to look at a read aloud and then take notes on the steps that chemical engineers take when they're designing a project. The kids will take a language test on verb tenses and correlative conjunctions, which we'll review before the test. We'll have buddies next week. Everybody is doing a chit chat speech next week, which is a 3-minute speech. If you haven't heard about that, your student can at least practice one time before their speech. Everybody's going on a different day next week, so they can practice just before that, but it would be great for them to practice it at home. That makes a big difference. I would like to do a mile run practice where we actually go out and run maybe half a mile so the kids can get a feel for what that looks like, because later in the year, all the 5th graders have to do some physical fitness testing, including a 1-mile run. So we might get to that. If we do that, I think it's going to be on Thursday. But if that doesn't come up next week, it will come up soon. So like I said, as usual, there is a lot happening. But I think we're getting to in the really kind of fun part of the year as we're getting speeches and we're learning a little bit more about the early Americas. And we're going to switch gears in the next few weeks. We're going to start to finish up some units and start on some brand new things. So I think that will be really fun. So like I said, there's a lot going on. If you have any questions, please let me know anytime. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.